Hey everybody, this is Xavier from Golden Fly Shop, and today I want to show you guys how to tie my favorite woolly bugger variation, the Squish bugger. This is a super simple tie and one of my favorite single hook streamers. There's a couple material substitutions and some stuff added up in the front, but super simple tie. Let's get to it. Today we are tying the Squish bugger, whatever you want to call it. Just a little bugger variation. It's got heavy tungsten eyes on there, a softer body in the middle with a little bit of texture, and then we got some Simi seal at the head, just to add a little bit more bulk, flash, etc. So we are using a Tiemco 5262 size 4. You guys can use a longer hook, a shorter hook. I just like, for these single hook flies, I prefer the 2X long hooks. Seem to bend out a little bit less. Uni-Thread, 6/0, Chartreuse, thread color doesn't matter, use whatever you got. And now we're going to put on some of these tungsten dumbbell eyes from Flowing Mill, and these are the 4 mil black nickel, doesn't matter again. We'll start out with thread base. Doesn't have to be anything super specific. I usually go third to halfway back, just to have it secured on there. Come back up front where we're going to be throwing the eyes on, and we're going to be doing some X wraps to get our dumbbells on. Take your time with these if you guys aren't super comfortable doing it. I usually do 1 wrap forward, 1 wrap back, but you know, as you're a beginner, 2 or 3 is a little bit more controlling, a little bit more secure, but as you go on with your tying, you can use less thread wraps. So I'm just gonna take my time, do some X wraps. It'll probably move around to start a little bit. And the more thread you got on there with the proper amount of tension, the more it wants to get locked in properly. And that's probably good where it's at. You can notice the eyes look a little bit uneven. I like to use the rotary functioning on my vise and always just make sure that they're kind of sitting evenly so the fly wants to keel correctly. From here I'll kind of do a parachute wrap underneath the eyes just to really add some more secure connections to it. So I really hate it when dumbbells slide, and this with proper thread tension seems to help out significantly. Kind of secure it up, and just to be safe I'll do couple more X wraps. Again, I don't know how necessary those are, but I like it. So now we're gonna bring our thread back to barb roughly, and we're gonna add 2 clumps of Marabou. We're gonna do showed you guys all of one. We're gonna do the black version. So I got some of this, the Flowing Mill Premium Select Marabou. Super high quality stuff, seems to be more consistent in their packaging. We do carry this in the shop. We're just gonna take 2 tips of this. If you guys want to save the back end of these quills, you can. I know a lot of people like to use them for making collars, or you know, scrap for like carp flies, stuff like that. But anyways, I tend to get a little section off of there. So that'll be my first one I'm gonna put on. And length of the tail is kind of personal preference. I typically go halfway through this angle on my Renzetti. You know, that's roughly a hook length when you're talking about these 2X long hooks, you know, in the size 4. So that'll add plenty of movement, not be too long where we're fouling up. I'm just gonna pinch this on here and bring it back to our comeback point on the hook. Oops. And I'm gonna leave this on here right now because we're gonna add some more Marabou. So I'm just gonna repeat the process. Cut a tip off of one of the quills, secure it on directly on top, same length, same everything. Looks about even there. So There we go, looking pretty good. And then from here you can cut this, or sometimes what I like to do just for evenness of the body is I'll just take controlled wraps up front, roughly to those dumbbells. Secure it off, make sure it's nice and tight, smooth it all out. Cut this off. As you can see, there's quite the taper right there, so if you do it in the middle, you got to kind of do some extra wraps with the chenille to kind of overcome this. But anyways, if you bring it up to the front, your tapering is not going to be as bad, and usually this is all filled up with, you know, talking the chenille, our saddle hackle, and our dubbing loop, so that'll get filled in pretty quickly. From here now, I'm going to take some saddle hackle in black. You can kind of use a junk feather on this. It doesn't really matter, because as you can tell, most of it's kind of covered up anyways, so just trying to keep with the traditional bugger style. Gonna peel back some of the quills on here, and we're gonna tie in this tip. You don't have to tie in the entirety of the tip, but we're gonna bring it up there. And again, if this isn't pretty, that is a-okay, because everything's getting covered up. I tend to wrap a lot of the stem of the hackle so it doesn't pull out. And if you wrap that much, you see just how much I did. If you don't do that much, that's where wire comes into play, where securing your hackle over the top will help. But if you tie in a bunch of this stem, you won't have to use wire because you have a super sturdy connection here, as long as you pull super tight down on this hackle. So anyways, you're gonna see me not using wire. If you don't like tying in that much stem, do use wire, just so your hackle does not pull out. But again, this is not the prettiest look in the world right now. Now we're gonna take some of this Chewy worm material from Flooring Mill. I believe this is the medium size in Chartreuse. Just got this nice soft core with the micro rubber legs coming off of it. Just gonna add a unique coloration and texture to this fly. How much it really helps, I don't know. But it'll push water in a little bit different manner because again, you have all these micro rubber legs. Yeah, so just looking for something different, especially since there's a ton of people fishing nowadays, so anything in your favor will help. So you can kind of just cut off a section. This will tie you multiple flies. We're going to just secure this on the back half of it. Because of the soft core, as you can tell, it lays down really flat, so you don't have to worry about creating bulk in the back end when you guys are putting this on. Then I'm just going to give it quite a few wraps, just kind of mat it down and make sure it's extra secure, because even though it is a soft cores tend to pull out a little bit more. But regardless, now we're just gonna bring our thread up to the dumbbells, and we're going to wrap this fly with the chenille. Touch and turns, doesn't have to overlay, anything like that. We don't have to do anything pretty because rubber legs are coming out on every single corner of it, so you don't need to take your time pulling it back like you would with longer chenilles. There we go, and final wrap, we're gonna secure this right behind those dumbbell eyes. I usually just do 2 with this softer core. It'll bite really good if you use proper thread tension. Pull it back, bring the thread in front of it, and cut it off. And then I'll just take a couple more wraps just to make sure it's nice and secure. I wrapped the chenille this way. Now I'm gonna wrap my hackle this way. Kind of like bringing my materials in opposite directions so they can lock into each other in a much more efficient manner. And instead of touching turns with this hackle, we're just gonna evenly space them out just like you're tying any other woolly bugger. Again, this isn't a super complicated fly. Don't need to take your time wrapping this hackle. Like I said, using junk feathers for this part of the fly, it's not a bad thing whatsoever because again, most of it's covered up. Bring it back to a dumbbell. I'm gonna secure this. And I do like having some of those webbier fibers in there. Just adds a little bit more oomph and swim to the fly. It's kind of like using Marabou without tying extra Marabou on. And we're gonna secure that. It's like how we did the chenille. Cut that off. And it's still looking pretty ugly, but you know what? We got a final step. So now I'm gonna use my rotary function, pull this thing right side up. So this is how it's gonna fish because we have our dumbbells on the bottom. Now I'm going to make a little bit of a dubbing loop here, right behind the dumbbells. And bring your thread in front. Again, like I said, this is ugly, but it's kind of one of those flies that you can tie up super quick, bust a bunch out, and use junk feathers. So that's the beauty of it. Now we're going to use some of this MFC Arizona semi-sealed dubbing. This is the black peacock coloration. It's got black with a little bit of, well, peacock, so it's got bronze and a little bit of olive peacock coloration in there. I forgot my dubbing loop tools, so just gonna have to compromise and use our hand here. I like to get a fair amount in here. We do want to build up some mass, and the semi-seal, once you're working with it, it likes to kind of pull out. So as you can see here, we got a nice loop filled with dubbing. Like I said, I forgot my tool here, so do not judge. All right. Got that spun up. We're gonna just brush some of this excess out, if there is any. Kind of pull it out with your hand as well. And then from here, we're just gonna X-wrap this dubbing loop with the semi-seal. Gonna wrap it in front of the hackle a couple times, and then start doing the X-wrap. And take your time doing this. Doesn't have to be pretty either because we're gonna brush this out super hard afterwards. So if it seems a little matted up, that's a-okay. And there we go. We're gonna pinch off the loop. Cut that off. It's worth it. There's so many fish. And it's going to take a couple whip finishes up front. I'm not a fan of using UV glue or head cement on my streamers. Why? I don't know. Just a superstition, but I've never really had my whip finishes fall apart if I do a couple of them. And if one does fall apart, I got 2 or 3 more. So now we're just going to take our brush and brush this bad boy out. So and really we're just trying to pick out some loose ends, pull out the stuff that's kind of snagged up on itself. And it's semi-seal, so it picks apart really good and holds mass really well while still having a very, very thin profile. So as you can see here, pulled it out pretty good. Sometimes I'll come through the bottom and top and just kind of pull out some longer fibers. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is the Squish bugger. Kind of just came up with this the other day and fished it and did really well. So yeah, super simple woolly bugger alternative that flat out catches fish. So looks a lot different than what everyone else is using. go ahead and give it a go. All the materials are linked below.